This became one thing with Greece. They called Magna Grecia, like the bigger Greece. And the inside, well, we say Vesicania, they stayed separated. Now, we go down in time, and the important element here to know is, you know Pythagoras? Yeah. You know where Pythagoras was teaching, where was he located? In Calabria. You know Calabria? Crotone? And eventually he died in Metaponto. But the school from Pythagoras continues with Euclid. Archimedes learned from Euclid and therefore Pythagoras. Euclid, Archimedes. A classmate of Archimedes was Eratosthenes. Are you familiar with Eratosthenes? The director of the Library of Alexandria of Egypt. Yeah? So direct descendant of the learning of Aristotle, Alexander the Great, and the Library of Alexander of Egypt. And so this is we are going in this culture will go down between 500 before Christ and 200 before Christ. These 300 years. I call that the modern history for Sicily. And why I say the modern history of Sicily? Because at one point something happens in 212 before Christ when Archimedes gets killed by the Romans. That day, it's like if a cultural cataclysm, earthquake occurred. Because the Romans were great engineers, great conquerors, great warriors, but they were not philosophers or mathematics. Right? So the philosophy of mathematics stops with the death of Archimedes and then connects with Newton. So that's the damage, cultural damage that occurred for all our culture in general. So I will try to tell you why I'm saying this about Archimedes, because we have three codices of Archimedes, A, B, C. Remember that we didn't tell the time the number 1, 2, 3, but numbers were letters. So in order to understand what they were thinking of, we have to think in terms of number 1. For us, number 1 is the first number. We're all thinking 1, 1, 1, 1. Right now, today we say me, 1, 1, 1. Individual, each personality has to express oneself. So 1 for us is extremely important. Go back in those days, number 1 really didn't exist. They didn't use it. Everything was a pair. You had 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 hands, right? Then the perfection was number 2. Why? A woman. A woman is intrinsically 2. Is the only one that can carry the femininity, the creation, the procreation. You can carry a child. So it's 2. Everything was a pair. Even soldiers. We have a pair of soldiers. It was all the armies, the most important armies, the strongest armies of the time, the Spartan armies, or whatever army was the strongest, was also because the soldiers were a pair. They were 2 guys, ready to kill themselves for the survival of the other one. So the couple was always looking to defend each other. Alexander the Great, how do you remember Alexander the Great? In the stories, he's never alone. There's always the boyfriend, all the way to the end of his life, or the horse. So it's Alexander and the horse, the white horse. Alexander and the boyfriend. It's in Greek we have the dual verb. The Germans, who speaks German here? Most of you, right? German is like the most interesting language surviving today because German contains all the Greek, all the Latin, all the past. Is the richest language in terms of how many words do you have in your alphabet? In your language. Yeah. So now think that the Greeks had like 80,000 words at the time when the Romans with Latin had only 4,000 words. Look at the difference. I mean, the more words you have, the more concepts you can elaborate. Like German philosophy can talk about what in Italian we say l'essere. The English language doesn't have a word for l'essere. It says the being, which is the essere that is being something. But the absolute abstract concept of the essere comes from Heidegger, from your philosophers. Your philosophers create the abstract, right? That doesn't exist in the pragmatic philosophy of the English world. So that I got lost there. Why did we go into this language? Okay. So numbers. We're talking about numbers. So, no numbers. Before we go to the numbers, as we know, today we have to go to Fibonacci. Are you familiar with Fibonacci? No, Fibonacci. Allora, we say 1, 2, 3, 4. Where did this come from? You know, the Roman numbers were all letters. Right? The Archimedes numbers were letters. Fibonacci is a young guy from Tuscany, from Pisa. The father was a merchant, used to commerce a lot through Sicily, North Africa, Egypt, the Mediterranean, and connected with Tuscany. As a young man, he was with his father, helping always the father to do the counting. He was always writing numbers, right? But with the letters. Eventually, as a young man, he developed this, through all these contexts, he developed this symbolism. The zero, right? The zero, you know where zero comes from? Zero, zephyr. A number that is so light like the wind, the zephyr wind. It's an invention of the Indians. India invented the zero. Under the dynasty, I think it was the Guptas in 500 after Christ, between 450 and 500 after Christ. They started writing the zero as this number that was a light number. And the zero changed everything in the accounting. It was an important number. Then number 1 is the number of the Romans, right? Number 1. The Romans used this 1. But then the Romans did what? 2, right? And then they did 3. What Fibonacci did, he did 1, then he did 2. If you look at this, it's just a little connection, it becomes a 2. Right? Then 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. A little connection here. And so forth. If you look at this electronic clocks that you have in your hotel sometimes, you know, if you look at all those numbers, the 5, the 6, it's all lines like this, right? It's all Fibonacci. The only number that comes from the Muslims, from the Arabs, non-Muslims but Arabs, is the 9. The 9 is an Arab number. 0 is Indian, and the other ones are all the Roman ones positioned differently. And so with Fibonacci comes the modern accounting. Accountants today prepare our tax papers with Fibonacci. Why Fibonacci is important? Because Fibonacci had a meeting with the King of Sicily, Federico II, in 1240s, because Federico was fascinated by what he had heard about this guy creating all these numbers. And so they had actually a meeting about these numbers. And Fibonacci eventually created schools where he was teaching this new mathematics, this way of writing mathematics, in Florence. And Leonardo da Vinci studied in a Fibonacci school. That's why Fibonacci then connects to all our modern culture through the Renaissance. So before Fibonacci thing, no numbers but letters. And so going back to Archimedes, we have like the palimpsests, we have 3 major codex. So Archimedes, like this is a codex. Now for Archimedes we have 3 of those, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, but no letter, no numbers, so A, B, C. The C was found recently. When was found? So it was 1999, maybe? 1999. It's in a private collection, and now it's the University of, what is it? The Museum of Baltimore, University of Virginia? Baltimore. They are working on deciphering the 3rd codex of Archimedes. And how did they find it? In a prayer book, in